By the time that Jesus set his face toward Jerusalem, the disciples must have been sure that they had attached themselves to a rising star. They were already debating who would sit on his right hand and his left when Jesus came into his kingdom. All of which made it all the more shocking to them when Jesus began to tell them that he would soon be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and in fact, he would be killed. Peter took Jesus aside to rebuke him, so the gospel writer Mark says. We don't know exactly what Peter said to him, but it must have been something along the lines of, Jesus, you have got to stop talking like this. Don't you know how popular you are? We have seen you work miracles. We know that you have the power to drive out the Romans and to restore the kingdom of Israel. Little did Peter know that Jesus had already had this discussion once with the devil during his time in the desert following his baptism. In Matthew's gospel, we read how the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. All this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. In that moment, Peter was offering Jesus the devil's bargain once again. Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, and he quickly knew that Peter was speaking on behalf of all of them. Therefore, Jesus once again rejected the offer, saying to Peter and to the devil, get behind me, Satan. And to all his disciples, he made it clear that they had misunderstood his intentions. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, he told them, but merely human concerns. The problem with following Jesus is that he is always going in a different direction than we want to go. He gets that from his Father. As Isaiah wrote, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. We see that played out all the time in life. When was the last time you told someone you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns? Probably never. Truth is, we want people to have human concerns. We think that the way to make things right in our world is to seize power and control over others. We think that the ends will always justify the means. We believe that might for right can establish justice. We want leaders who will shape the world the way that we think that it ought to be shaped, by any means possible. Therefore, we all too easily empower anyone who will reflect our human concerns and who will promise us an easy fix for all that troubles us. Meanwhile, of course, God might have different concerns and a different plan for our life. At its heart, true discipleship is nothing less than setting our minds upon the concerns of God rather than our human concerns. And being all too human, that is not so easy for us to do. Having rebuked his disciples, Jesus then turned to the crowd, those who were always following him wherever he went. They too had the wrong idea about where all of this was leading. The words Jesus said next shocked all of them. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes to his Father's glory with the holy angels. It was all about the path that Jesus had chosen to take and the path he had refused to take. He could have had it all. Everything this world could offer, but at the cost of his relationship with God his Father. All he needed to do was give the crowd what they wanted. And all they wanted was for him to become a little more like them. They were willing for Jesus to become their king, but they didn't know what to do with someone whose only goal was to save their souls. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, at age 25, was already a professor at the University of Berlin when he was ordained in the Union Evangelical Church in 1931. He strongly opposed the Nazi rise to power, and 2 days after Hitler was installed as chancellor, Bonhoeffer delivered a radio address in which he attacked Hitler and warned Germany against slipping into an idolatrous cult of the Führer, or leader, who could very well turn out to be Verführer, the misleader or seducer. He was cut off the air in the middle of a sentence. Soon the German National Church itself became deeply compromised in its witness, voting to remove church officials and pastors of Jewish descent, for instance, with many even demanding the removal of the Old Testament from the Bible as too Jewish. In 1933, Bonhoeffer joined the Pastors' Emergency League, comprised of only about 20% of German pastors at the time. Later, to become a confessing church, in May 1934, they adopted a statement which declared that Christ, not the Führer, was the head of the church. Bonhoeffer traveled to ecumenical gatherings in other countries, seeking to rally international opposition to the amalgamation of Nazism with the Christian church. He was then told by a bishop to abstain from any more ecumenical activity not authorized by Berlin, advice which he ignored. In 1935, he returned to Germany and established an underground seminary to train pastors in the confessing church. By August 1937, Himmler had decreed the education and examination of confessing church ministry candidates to be illegal, and by November he had arrested 27 pastors and their former students. About that same time, Bonhoeffer's book, The Cost of Discipleship, was published, and Bonhoeffer himself was banned from Berlin. In it, he wrote, "Costly grace is the gospel which must be sought again and again and again, the gift which must be asked for, the door at which a man must knock. Such grace is costly because it calls us to follow Jesus Christ. It is costly because it costs a man his life, and it is grace because it gives a man the only true life." Bonhoeffer himself would eventually be arrested, imprisoned, and executed on April 9, 1945. He had just concluded his final Sunday service among his fellow prisoners when they came to take him away. "This is the end," he told them, "but for me, the beginning of life." 2 weeks later, the camp was liberated by American troops. Is this what Jesus meant? Are we to take his words and his example so seriously that no one else can ever compel our loyalty? Are we to truly deny our nature and our reliance upon our own wisdom or that of others and follow only Jesus, even if it means walking with him to Calvary? It seems so to me. Our ways are not God's ways. The life of faith is an unending struggle to put our trust in God and in no other. Therefore, it is wise and even of paramount importance for us to question at any and every moment in life whether we have truly set our minds upon the things of God. As Jesus said, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." "If anyone is ashamed of me and my words," Jesus said, "the Son of Man will be ashamed of them." And Jesus also called them an adulterous and sinful generation. I pray that we are not like that generation, but I worry that we could be. They understood Jesus to mean that they were no longer God's people at all, even though they claimed to be. Instead, they had been seduced and drawn away. And if they were to have any future, they desperately needed now to return to the one true God. Paul kind of answered Jesus here when he said so much later, "I am not ashamed of the gospel. because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes. Salvation begins when Jesus is our Lord, and there is no other whom we trust to show us the way. Be safe, and God bless you.